no matter how good the economy is doing, make sure you take an opportunity to do a recession drill where you might say, okay, we lose 40%, 80% of our revenue. What can we do? And in that recession drill, you'll be more prepared when it does happen.
Hi, I'm Andre Chandra, founder and CEO of Propelo Media. In today's Ask an Expert series, we're going to be talking to Ryan Shortill, founder and CEO of Positive Adventures, a premier experiential education company that does team building, outdoor education, and youth programming services all over the world. Let's check it out.
All right, Ryan Shortill, thank you for joining us today. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about you and your company there?
Sure, my name's Ryan Shortill, originally from the great state of New Hampshire, but I've been in San Diego 15 years, built the company by myself. You know, I had gotten a degree in something else, but snuck into a college class on how to build a business plan. After a couple of weeks, the teacher found out about it, and he'd say, "Who are you?" And I said, "I really need your help," and he helped me along. And so I started Positive Adventures, and we do a lot of corporate social responsibility. We have businesses do give backs in their local communities and also with conferences. And then we do outdoor education retreats with children and whole class groups from schools. And basically we do experiential education and then process it with folks. And I think it's a really valuable education model that gets overlooked in today's traditional classroom setting.
Got it. All right. And if you can share with us, how has COVID impacted you and your business? When we last met, I have to say that you're kind of the canary in the coal mine, because when no one else talked about, COVID or shelter in place, you started seeing, the impacts of it very early on. So maybe you can share about that.
Absolutely. And by the way, thanks for having me on today. So I like to read a lot of international news. I've traveled a lot in my life. I have a variety of friends who are kind of up to date in geopolitical fashions, and we had all been tracking about COVID. And I had a feeling that we might be witnessing a televised global pandemic. I would say that I failed to run recession drills in my business, and it's a good takeaway for business owners and other people is no matter how good the economy is doing, make sure you take an opportunity to do a recession drill where you might say, okay, we lose 40%, 80% of our revenue. What can we do? And in that recession drill, you'll be more prepared when it does happen. So in any case, I had a really good understanding that the crisis was sweeping through China, and I was really staying up to date on it. And I knew it was only a matter of time before the United States would probably be closed down. With that being said, I adjusted all of my contracts for the reimbursements, for making sure deposits and the ways that they got reimbursed would at least slightly protect the organization while also maintaining good integrity with the clients. But I had a conversation with a friend one time a couple of months ago, probably in November, and I was saying the good news is groups have been around since the dawn of time. We're social animals. And, there's the Coliseums and, there's all these different places where groups came together. So I felt pretty good. And I also work in private schools, which demonstrates oftentimes some recession proofing because people always pay for their kids to stay in their class. So I was actually feeling fairly secure that if my corporate business went down, it would be fine because of all of our school groups. But I had never calculated in any disaster planning a cough which could potentially shut down all schools. The economy can go up and down with businesses, but kids still go to school. So I didn't really see that coming, and so my business is completely flat for the most part. We had to let go about 50 or 60 staff, first furloughed, then laid off. But we made a lot of strategic maneuvers with the PPP money and some grants. We're rebuilding our website. We're doing a lot of cleanup and catch up. And something I learned in an organization called EO was basically that it's important that you have some operating capital to save for a rainy day. So we had a little bit of that going on. And then we also reduced all of our expenses. And so that really helped out a lot. And so at this point, we're really jogging in place until it's time for groups to come back together. We're switching to online. We're doing more online trainings, training CEOs across the country. And we're actually looking to get into graduation celebrations online for schools that don't have an opportunity to have that. some sort of facilitated Zoom experience where they can celebrate, show class videos, have teachers talk, and actually make it a good ceremony. So business is hurting, but we've got 3-year contracts that we have in place, so we might be able to rebuild.
Got it.
There's a lot there.
Yeah. Well, now for those of those of us watching who wants to look for more resources, for this recession drill, is there a resource or is there a list that they can look up, or where can you point them if they want to learn more?
Well, I would first start with, there are some terms like doomsday reports and things like that. And so basically you start with your books and as a business owner, and you would say, what would happen if I only got 40% of my revenue for the next 6 months? What would happen if I only got 20% of my revenue for the next 6 months? And then you have to articulate triggers that happen along the way. So I don't necessarily know if there's a book about this or workshops, but it's inherently a good drill. And I've heard other EO members talking about it and doing it in their forums. But basically it's looking at how much, and the keywords are runway, which is how much operating capital you have in order to be able to make all of your expenses. And you want to make sure that your runway is long enough to get to where your business is going to pick back up. So in the recession drill, you just start with, I lost 80% of my business because it's a lawsuit, a pandemic, whatever. What happens? Then what happens? Then what do we need to do to make something happen? Because you're just imagining the future, so you're better prepared when the future arrives. Prior proper planning prevents poor performance.
Right. Now, although every disaster, every recession is different, and like you shared earlier, no one really imagine, unless they're following the news, what's happening in China or Iran, the first 2 countries. No one knows how widespread, how big the impact of this pandemic really is. So thank you for sharing some of those, like the core basic stuff that people and businesses need to be ready for.
Yeah, you can also look at history. You can look up the top 10 pandemics, for example, or study the Spanish flu in 1918, because those are really great indicators of what we might be able to expect. And it sounds like what we might be able to expect is people getting a little tired of quarantining, then restrictions being lifted, and then a much higher spike before it goes back down. And so that's going to affect businesses potentially greater than anybody's anticipating. And I heard once the sports and casinos were closed, I knew we were really in some serious business. And then once politicians started getting sick, I realized this is beyond potentially just some sort of rigged system or, power play. I mean, this is hurting every industry across every single board. Granted, there are some that are exploding like they will in any opportunity in a crisis, like hand sanitizers and cleanings and whatnot. But it's going to be a very difficult road ahead, but it also spurs the greatest amount of creativity often. When we look at 2008, we look at all of these other businesses that were born out of that, Uber and Airbnb and all these other organizations. So I think you can even look back into history that there were other great scientific discoveries that happened during global pandemics. So look to history to know where we're headed in the future. But I do think eventually all things will return to normal. People will celebrate and rejoice as they have for 50,000 years.
Right. Now, I know I've known you for many years now, and one thing about you is that you're a very positive person and you have this positive mindset. Maybe you can share about that. How can people stay mentally healthy and being mindful throughout this pandemic?
Well, pandemic or not, it's always important to look after yourself. Self-care is not selfish, and if you don't make time for your wellness, disease will make time for you. The way that I look at it is you have 4 energies. You have physical energy, mental energy, spiritual energy, and emotional energy. And when you are out of balance on any of those things, it's much harder to attract and be healthy enough to adapt with the current changes of any life. And so by making time for each of those things, physical health might be something like running and or it's spending some time on a trail, because when you're running and you're on the trail, now you're getting some mental wellness, because looking and being in nature can lower stress hormones. And then you want to make sure that you're finding purpose and meaning to your life, whichever your faith. That is the spirituality component, whether you're making it to church, finding time to meditate, finding time to tap into your own self. And then you want to make sure that your physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being are aligned. And that's where like yoga and other practices come in mind. The next piece is you have growth mindset and a fixed mindset. And a lot of people have a fixed mindset. This is my job. This is what I do. At 65, I'll retire, and then I will move on to the next phase of my life. Other people, I have a job. I'm taking classes. I'm looking to advance. I might jump to a different industry. I might move across the country. That might be a growth mindset. And so it's important right now to remember that this is a growth experience and an opportunity for expansion, but only if you capitalize on it. So drinking plenty of water, getting plenty of rest, trying new and exciting and healthy foods, sharing in new thought processes, hearing and understanding new ideologies, whether they're for business or for wellness, getting your workout partners, accountability buddies, maybe trying a new smoothie of the day. All of those things give you a shield in sudden misfortune. You go out for a run, then you go to a yoga class, you have a delicious lunch, you're ready for your 2 p.m. Zoom call. But if you're on your 4th cup of coffee, you've been sitting down all day, you only had a cheap donut for lunch, by the time you get to your 2 o'clock call, it's just not as fun. So by taking care of yourself, you get to take care of everybody else. Health is wealth, and that's what I always try to focus on. The rest of the stuff will come if you're healthy.
Right.
And I'll add this last piece. You have a world of problems until you get sick, and then you only have one.
Right. All right. Now, before this call, we talked a little bit about some matters that surprisingly didn't get a whole lot of awareness, and that's what's happening with family courts being closed and some families that are vulnerable if you're in an abuse situation. So can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. So obviously there's a lot of other industries that are hurting, as well as the medical industry. All of those folks are having to work double time, overtime. They're hardly seeing their families. And then something relating to COVID, which affected me personally, is I have a divorced relationship. I have 2 children. We live between homes, and we had some scheduled court appearances to work on some custody, to share the kids correctly, and the courts have been closed. And so it keeps getting pushed further and further, and we're okay and we'll get by. But things that are happening outside that people may not be recognizing are that, restraining orders can't be got, or they might not be able to be executed, or there's a lot of difficulties where people who are almost near closure and a variety of things are having to wait. And that's more so than just having to be at the couch and watching Netflix. There are children who went to school and that was their only time to be away from abuse, or in order to get a good meal. And so there are, I think, a lot of us Americans quietly suffering. And there's not that much we can seem to do to get to say the courts to open, but we can then go back to focusing on what we can control, like our health, our sleep, what we eat if we're lucky, and we'll hopefully all get through this.
All right. So now the next question is, what have been the biggest decisions that you've made for yourself and for Positive Adventures since the outbreak?
Well, the first and biggest decision that I made was I was not going to panic. I was not going to be stressed. I was going to be clear and level-headed, and to be a good father, and to show strength and understanding, and to prioritize my family first, which is one of Positive Adventures' core values. And but it's also been difficult letting go of everybody. So we applied for all of those loans. We worked on ramping up the team, and what we're doing, I think our greatest takeaway so far is a lot of cleanup and catch up, new product offerings, and fortifying our existing business by rebranding into corporate retreats and youth experiences with the corporate social responsibility with corporate, and new websites, new copy. We wouldn't have been able to do that hurried as we were scaling into the millions. We needed to slow down and just do a little catch up, and that's where we're at. So I think one of the biggest decisions that we've made was to fortify the organization as opposed to just give up with our tails between our legs.
Right, right. Now I want to basically end this in a more positive note, because you've been following this pandemic before it even hit the United States. So I believe that there's light at the end of the tunnel. So what is your outlook on what's been going on, and how will businesses come back from this?
We'll see some modifications, but I don't think they'll be as lasting as people think. World War II, there was drastic shifts in society, and there was a lot of different issues and industries that were playing catch up, but eventually life returned to normal. And I think that we will eventually, a few years from now, be at the kids' soccer game, and people will be going to the football games. And like any good snowstorm, it's cold for a while, but eventually the warm comes back, it starts to melt, or you dig yourself out. Either way, we are not descendants of fearful people. We will overcome, we will adapt, we will adjust, we will make accommodations, because this is our time to live. Andre, you chose this present moment to be on Spaceship Earth, and it's going to require you and me and everyone else to work on solutions to better unify us all so that we can all live a more just and fruitful life with less trauma and drama and a lot more growth and dreams. And that's what I believe is going to happen. We'll continually expand into more conscious and creative ways of existing on the planet together. And that's my hope and dream and belief.
All right. Amen, brother. Now, is there anything that I haven't asked that you'd like to share?
For each of you out there watching this, take an opportunity to share your appreciation and gratitude for people around you whom you might not have in the past. Write that letter, make that call. Even if they're so far from the past and you don't think they will even remember you, take the opportunity and tell someone how much of an impact it made on you, because that is one of the greatest gifts you can do to someone else, where you also get a huge payout. I had an opportunity to do that. I sent it to my older brother, Michael. My older brother, Michael, passed away suddenly and left a 14, a 12, and a 10-year-old. And when I flew back home to take care of his personal effects, I found the letter that I wrote to my big brother on the top of his drawer, on the inside drawer on his desk. And, I cried once writing it, and I cried again reading it in my brother's room knowing he was gone. And I was so thankful, so grateful that I got that letter out when I did, because there is no time like the present, and this is all fleeting. There are no guarantees. So share the love that you have now. Don't keep it bottled up for any reason. Let it shine.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Well, I really appreciate, again, you joining us. So I wish you well with Positive Adventures. Sounds like you're pivoting very quickly, doing virtual events, virtual meets. So good luck to you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it, and keep up the good work, sir. The world's a better place with you in it.
All right. Thank you.
That's a wrap.
All right.